Welcome to the pre-solicitation webinar on electric charging infrastructure. I will turn it over to Lena Patel.
Thank you, Minda and Linda. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's electric charging infrastructure pre-solicitation webinar. I'm Lena Patel, a staff specialist with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. We have Jason Newman is assisting with this webinar, and Linda Hui will be moderating the public comment session at the end of this presentation. We also have Daniel Langmit from the Off-Road Group, Minda Barbaco with the On-Road Group, and Hannah Muga from the Marine and Locomotive Group, who will be available at the end of this presentation to respond to any clarification questions. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items so you know how to participate in today's webinar. Here is a screenshot of the Zoom interface. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer desk at the top of your screen or bottom of your screen. You have listening in your if you are listening in your own computer speaker by default, if you would like to prefer to join over the phone, select the up arrow to the right of your microphone button, which will pop up a menu. Select the switch to phone option and enter in the dial-in information in your invite email to join by phone. To avoid any distractions, please make sure your video is turned off and that you are muted. Lastly, you will have the opportunity to submit comments on the proposed solicitations by typing your comments in the chat session using the chat button and sending it to the Please Send My Comments Jason host or to everyone. You may send in your comments at any time during this presentation so that we can collect them and read them during the public comment session at the end of this presentation. Alternatively, you may also use the raise hand function to speak. Before we will dive into presentation, it is important to note that this presentation is a high-level overview of eligibility, evaluation, and background information. The proposed solicitation aligns with the current CORMOIA program Chapter 10 infrastructure guidelines. The eligibility and evaluation criteria are preliminary and subject to change, and this is not the final version of the solicitation. The final guidance will be released when the solicitation opens. Additional required details will be available in the solicitation guidance prior to solicitation, and interested applicants are encouraged to review before submitting applications. This webinar is to collect public comments on a potential solicitation. In today's webinar, I will cover the topics listed on the slide. We will start with the goal of this competitive solicitation, then we will share the proposed available funding, and then dive into eligibility criteria in equipment categories, eligibility application, and project type and eligible cost. We will also share the evaluation criteria and tentative program schedule. And at the end of the presentation, we will be available to collect comments and answer clarifying questions. Overall, this webinar will be about an hour. Thank you. The main goal of the competitive solicitation is to fund permanent new electric infrastructure installations or expansions to existing infrastructure that will spur the development of zero-emission vehicles and equipment in the Bay Area in order to expedite air quality improvements in priority communities. All projects funded by this solicitation would need to be placed into service by early 2027. Next slide. The district is proposing to open our competitive infrastructure only solicitation with $35 million available for electric charging infrastructure that support all project categories of medium and heavy duty equipment and vehicles within the Air District's jurisdiction. At least 80% of the funds are targeted for Air District defined priority communities. The goal of the solicitation is to issue at least 7 awards. The maximum awards to a single applicant is $20 million. However, there is no cap on number of sites an applicants can apply for. Co-funding with other sources is allowed as long as the requirements of all programs are met. This table shows the maximum funding percentage of eligible costs that are available for the different project types based on a site's location and other project attributes. I will discuss eligibility costs later in this presentation. Let's review a few notes in this table. The higher percentage for projects that provide emissions reductions in a disadvantaged community or DAC. The DACs are defined in the solicitation and there is a link to a map showing these areas. For project types located in a sensitive receptor is education's resources such as preschool and kindergarten through grade 12 K-12 schools, daycare centers, and healthcare facilities such as hospitals or retirement and nursing homes. A sensitive receptor also includes long-term care hospital, hospice, prisons, and dormitories or similar living in housing. Note that project must be located on a parcel that is not either zoned residential or located adjacent to a property that is zoned residential. For solar and wind power systems, at least 50% of the power must come from this source. There are also additional incentives for projects also serving ports, rail yards, or freight facilities. Remember that funding must not exceed 100% of eligible costs. Next slides. The charging infrastructure may be used to support several categories of medium and heavy-duty equipment and vehicles. Example includes, but not limited to, on-road vehicles above 14,001 lb gross vehicle weight rating, such as transit and school buses and trucks. Mobile off-road equipment such as agricultural equipment, construction equipment, transportation, refrigeration units, forklifts, cargo handling equipment, and ground support equipment, locomotives, and marine vessels. Please note that we are not funding infrastructure to support light-duty vehicles, for example, passenger cars. If you're interested in funding for those vehicle types, please see the Air District Charge Program. Let's review proposed applicants' eligibility. Both public and non-public entities can apply for this solicitation. Applicants and any non-parent company and affiliates operating at the proposed sites must be in compliance with the Air pollution control laws, and they need to submit the air district regulatory compliance statement. Applicants cannot have a NOV either with the air district or with the California Air Resources Board. I encourage to visit Notice of Violation Issued page at the Air District website to verify the compliance status. All applicants must be in a good standards with the Air District to be eligible. This includes meeting all applicable contractual requirements for any project funded by the Air District, not having failed the fiscal or performance audit in the past 3 years, and being in compliance with all local, state, federal air quality regulations. Applicants must demonstrate that they either own the land on which the project will be located or control it through a long-term lease or other legal arrangements for the project term. For a proposed project where the land is not owned by applicant, an executed lease agreement or letter of commitment lasting for the duration of the project life must be signed by the property owner, authorized representatives, and must be submitted along with the application. Here are the proposed eligible criteria for the projects. Projects should demonstrate a need and primarily support eligible equipment categories. Project should be shovel ready at the time of application and demonstrate it can be completed by early 2027. The infrastructure site will need to be maintained and operated for a minimum of 3 years. The project must have work to be completed by licensed and certified contractors. It's important to note that no binding financial action taken prior to contract execution. Otherwise, it will lead to disqualifying of the project. As I referred earlier, that project should not be the part of the residential zone or adjacent to a residential property. Here are some of the key equipment eligibility requirements for the solicitation for all projects. The infrastructure must be new and permanently installed in the air district's jurisdiction. Both public and non-public accessible projects are allowable. For additional information, please refer to draft solicitation guidance posted on the Air District website. Equipment must be level 2 and above and 6.6 kilowatts output or greater. Equipment must use a valid and universal accepted charge protocol connector protocol. Equipment must be certified by National Recognized Testing Laboratory. Equipment must have at least 3 years warranty. Equipment must have at least a 95% uptime in which they are operational. I previously discussed the maximum percentage of eligible cost for different project types. Here is a list of proposed eligible costs the Air District is considering in this solicitation. The costs include the cost of design and engineering, such as labor, site preparation, ADA accessible signage, cost of the charging equipment, such as charging units, energy storage equipment, cost of installation, meter and data loggers, on-site power generation system that fuels or power cover sources, for example, solar and wind power generation system. Some pre-contract fees such as permits, design and engineering, etc. Federal and sales and other taxes, shipping and delivery costs, consulting fees associated with the preparation of environmental documents. Please note that eligible costs are limited to the purchase and installation of the equipment for power delivery directly related to the infrastructure project, and any costs not associated with these items are ineligible for funding. Here is the proposed evaluation criteria for the solicitation. Again, this is a competitive solicitation. All complete applications that are received by the deadline will first be reviewed for basic eligibility according to the Carr-Moyer program guidelines and requirements described in the solicitation guidance. Then each site will be evaluated independently. Sites will be ranked based on the criteria listed in this slide, including statement of need, readiness, potential impact of grant awards, and others. Let's review each criteria. Statement of needs. Each site will first be reviewed to assess potential demand for the charges by evaluating statement of need documentation that may include one or more of the following: evidence that the applicant or other entity owns or has a purchase order for the vehicles or equipment that would use the chargers. Second, evidence that there is going to be a need for the charges, such as an upcoming compliance deadline, coupled with demonstration about the inventory of vehicle in the areas. Third, the other documentation showing that charges would be used within 3 years or sooner for reasons not listed here. Next, we will evaluate the site's readiness to determine a site's potential to be installed and operating within 2 years. At minimum, each site must meet at least 2 of the criteria shown on this slide. After that, each site will be ranked by grant dollars requested divided by the total amount of kilowatts that can be delivered at the site. The kilowatts that can be delivered to the charging site must be accounted for when all chargers are used at the same time and given any limitation of electric capacity of the site or load management software. If oversubscribed, tie break, we will look at proximity to sensitive receptors. And finally, we will ensure that at least 80% of the available funds will be awarded to projects that reduce emissions in priority communities. Please note that these are preliminary ideas and this is subject to change. Let's review the tentative program schedule. Please note that these are tentative dates and are subject to change. I would like to pause for a couple of minutes for all participants to review this page. Okay. I would like to emphasize again that all work to install funded equipment must be completed by early 2027, which is within 2 years from the notice of award. And this is also the deadline for grantee to submit their reimbursement request. After the charging infrastructure is placed into service, the grantee must operate them and meet their usage requirements by spring 2023. Both the informations are listed in the last 2 rows. Thank you. The deadline for receiving comments is April 5 by 4 p.m. Pacific Time. You are welcome to submit additional comments by email to grants@baaqmd.gov and encouraged to review the district infrastructure website. I will pause on these slides to give you a chance to write this information down.